Welcome to the Issues of Sports. I am Mak, Evan Makovsky. I don't know why his character generator doesn't say Rude Dog because he is only the Rude Dog, but it says Rudy Reyes. So Evan Makovsky here. Hello, Rudy Reyes, aka the Rude Dog. How are you?
I'm doing good. Somebody actually called me R3, and I said, well, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that. But otherwise, I'm doing great. How are you, Evan?
I'm fine. R3 is in like RG3 minus the G, or Rudy
No.
Reyes the third.
Are you just starts with an R.
What?
My middle name starts with an R. That's why he said R3.
Oh, you don't want to reveal that. So it's Rudy R. Reyes, the Rude Dog. There's all sorts of R's bouncing around, but let's not talk about a J. Let's talk about the J, Jalen Hurts, who has signed the largest deal in NFL history. It is, and bear with me here because it's so expensive, a 5-year, $255 million extension that includes $179 million in guarantees. Okay, it's the biggest contract in terms of average annual value in NFL history. So we look at some other quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson, under much criticism to the Cleveland Browns, he signed a $230 million deal. What really set alarmists off is that all of it is guaranteed, and it was kind of a smack. I mean, we're going into different areas to people that the Browns would guarantee that money to Watson, coming off what he came off of, missing seasons and all the allegations against him, which were not minor. So, and then just giving you the lay of the land, you know, Daniel Jones signed in the offseason, but the person who's left out in the cold is Lamar Jackson. Let's just cut to the chase. To the chase, we're going to cut to it. Okay, he is not getting, and you'll get into his record, but he is not getting offers in both guaranteed money and in contract total. And he believes he should be in this group. And the first thing I would say to you is Hurts has played in the Super Bowl. I guess in that group also would be Patrick Mahomes. Hurts, obviously Mahomes has won 2 Super Bowls. He's played, I believe, in 4 Super Bowls. So Lamar Jackson, the last 2 seasons, and this is really what I think it's about, not him not having an agent, not people not thinking he's good. He doesn't want to accept less money, and he's missed 34% of his snaps the last 2 seasons when he could have been on the field. Not saying that those injuries, look, Tom Brady only missed really games when in 08 or 09 when he got injured and Matt Castle took over. So longevity isn't something that necessarily, in being durable, it can be used against you. I've had 5 knee surgeries. If I was a pro football player, I probably wouldn't be in the league right now, but your body has to be durable. So I think it's Jackson's durability here, and it's not his attitude. It's not, but both sides are digging in.
Well, both sides are digging in because clearly it was something that had been ongoing. No, he didn't get any type of assistance other than through the NFLPA when he was drafted in 2018. When I interviewed him at 32nd position overall, picked up by the Baltimore Ravens, it was him at his finest, at his the pure humility associated with being drafted in that position was something that he was just being thankful that the Ravens had taken a chance on him. He proved them right every single year. It was only up until this past season, that you had seen him go down with an injury. Well, there's a reason behind that. A lot of it had to do with the lack of weaponry. He had to do a lot of out-of-pocket things himself, scrambling out of the pocket, trying to throw the Mark
Andrews at tight end was a good player.
Yeah, he's a solid player. And again, but you can't have 1 or 2 guys and expect to get to the playoffs. There were guys who were uninjured who played okay. Defense was solid, but they were solid against teams they're familiar with. Steelers, they're familiar with the Browns. Everything within the AFC North seemed to be relatively wrapped up, but it was the other games out of conference, out of their specific division within the conference in the AFC North that they had issues with. And they had those issues along the way, where what's missing here is that Lamar Jackson stated before the season he was going to bet on himself. Yeah, he turned down a lot of money, but he wanted it all up front, guaranteed it, right? But for some reason, Eric DaCosta decided not to go that direction. When you look at Josh Allen's numbers, Josh Allen maybe missed 1 or 2 games, maybe, but he didn't get to the Super Bowl. He barely got to the AFC Championship game. And so him being number 2 or number 3 on a list of top 5 quarterbacks that deserve a contract such as that, I believe, honestly, because of the amount of weaponry that Josh Allen has around him.
What?
And
Diggs, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but Gabe Davis had a down year. Who's their tight end? Dawson Knox. I would Devin Singletary. I mean, I think Zach Moss went off to Indianapolis. I wouldn't say Devin Singletary is such a great runner. They had, they've had wide receivers, and Diggs has been tremendous the last couple of years, but he's now hit 30. I'm not sure. Yeah, I would say it's better than Lamar Jackson, and he's had a better team than Lamar Jackson. But would I say that he's dealt with a loaded, like the 99 Rams? No, I wouldn't.
No, not at all. And no one should. That shouldn't even be a comparable. But you look at Jalen Hurts. I mean, he got to the Super Bowl, throw more touchdowns for a losing team in Super Bowl history, and a guy who just seems to be the class act guy that everybody was waiting to see. But of course, when you look at Alabama, between Tua and Hurts, neither one of those guys have been in the Super Bowl except for Hurts. And I'd hate to say this, but what justifies Lamar Jackson?
What do you mean one of those guys? When has Tua ever played in the Super Bowl? He hasn't played in the Super Bowl.
No, I said one of those 2 guys. One of those 2 guys. Jalen Hurts is the only one out of those.
Oh, Hurts. Got you.
Point. Correct. And so with that, yeah, you have your Kyler Murray's, not worth the money. Russell Wilson, that remains to be seen depending on what Coach Sean Payton does with the Denver Broncos. Dak Prescott, who's indecisive on various downs. Not the best quarterback in the NFL, but certainly a starter in this league. Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl only 2 years outside of that. Ended up winning that one. Aaron Rodgers, yes, he's got the run and gun. He can still get it done. Whether or not he'll go to New York, that remains another topic for another time. But of course, Patrick Mahomes deserves all that bread. He's won 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years. So you have to look at this and think to yourself, well, those guys are worth it. Look, the Baltimore Ravens, without Lamar Jackson, without him in the lineup, sitting on the sidelines, counting his bread, they're only 4-8. That's it all time with Lamar Jackson under center. They are better with Lamar Jackson under center at 49-21. That must tell you something. He gives you more than J.K. Dobbins. He gives you more than any backup quarterback in the NFL.
What do you mean he gives you more than J.K. Dobbins? J.K. Dobbins is a rusher.
Well, J.K. Dobbins would have been the last resort quarterback on that roster. You couldn't have gone to him to say, you know what, we're going to replace you instead of Lamar Jackson. That's ludicrous. That's complete ludicrous nonsense. Look, Lamar Jackson deserved to be paid all that money up front. He earned it. So fine. So he was injured for not really a good part of the season, but the latter part of the season. His value dropped off the face of the planet the minute he was injured. But to your point, Evan, you're right. If you're under center and you're durable and you hurt yourself, Patrick Mahomes hurt his foot, and he went back into his ankle anyway.
Yeah.
See? So, but again, he has the weapons around him. Jalen Hurts has the weapons around him. Josh Allen has the weapons around him.
But Mahomes is dealing with turnover. The Juju Smith-Schuster went to the New England Patriots in the offseason. He was only there for a year. We know Tyreek Hill went to the Dolphins. Mecole Hardman, maybe you can look this up because it's escaping me, where he is playing, but he's left. So I mean, what Patrick Mahomes has is basically Travis Kelce, who's a Hall of Famer, hands down, first ballot. But he's dealt with. It's hard to keep these kinds of guys when they're winning Super Bowls and they're playing well in playoff games. Lesser teams are going to pay more for their services. You see that all the time in sports, where a second and third receiver on a championship team gets hired, and it doesn't work all the time to be the number one receiver. I mean, that's what the Dolphins clearly did with Tyreek Hill, and I think it worked, but they paid for it.
Well, they certainly paid for it. And to your point, Mecole Hardman went over to play for the New York Jets. So
yes,
look,
thank you.
Look, this Kansas City Chiefs team knows how to retool. They're not reinventing themselves. They're just retooling to make sure that when they reach into the shed, they can grab the sharpest instrument or the one that's going to get the job done. Unlike the Baltimore Ravens, who have failed miserably, other than maybe acquiring Mark Andrews and maybe getting into other few pieces, and then they go off their mindset and their rocker and pick up Odell Beckham Jr. Okay, I like the pick from a financial standpoint. You get him for a bag of peanuts and a tall Coke at the circus.
$15 million is a bag of peanuts in the NFL. You would take $15 million. It would change the entire rest of your life. But continue.
Well, granted, but OBJ has a lifestyle that he must continually
he must keep up,
right? That's just the way it is. So he didn't feel the love, and when someone says they don't feel the love, that means I don't feel the dollars. And so his mindset is, without dollars, it makes no sense, and it doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why he went over to Baltimore. The problem I have with this whole acquisition of OBJ is the fact they don't have a quarterback to throw the ball to if for some reason Lamar Jackson decides to sit out for the 2023-2024 season. So their best bet is to pay Lamar Jackson. Yes, their radar is on a quarterback. Okay, fine. Grab a quarterback in the second or third round, maybe third round, maybe fourth, depending on if your top three guys are gone already between CJ Stroud and company. CJ Stroud doesn't necessarily need to lead the way, but he's still in that conversation. But use him as a guy that you can mold into the eventual starting quarterback, right? Lamar Jackson has a lot of fantastic traits.
But I think go ahead. I think you're fine about the trades, but I don't think he's going to get a guaranteed contract from where I'm reading.
Not in Baltimore, he's not.
No, that the owners look at Deshaun Watson's contract as an anomaly, not a precedent. This is Colts owner Jim Irsay. I do not believe in fully guaranteed contracts. I think that a guaranteed contract percentage is one thing, but I think that what I've seen in the NBA and Major League Baseball, I just don't see it as positive competitively. I don't see it as a positive element at all. According to Mark Ganis, was a relationship with many owners, who has a sports consulting firm. He says that he's worked with roughly 2/3 of the NFL teams, and that their attitudes towards fully guaranteed deals among owners remains totally and wholly negative, with the Watson contract not viewed as a precedent that will force their hands. So it looks like Lamar Jackson is not going to get a fully guaranteed contract. Now, does he want to not play football? I mean, he can fight this fight. I mean, but nobody, is he willing to sit out and then make no money?
Well, if he signs that tender, he's going to be on the sidelines. Oh, I have an injury. I can't play. So there's his guaranteed money right there. So even if he doesn't get his fully guaranteed contract, if he doesn't acquire the monies that he is looking for, sign the contract
and tank it and start
sign
tanking
the tender and tank. Yes.
Come on. What do you mean tank? He'd get thrown out of the NFL if he started tanking.
But you as a player, I have an injury. I can't play.
Well, how do you do that? I mean, then you're not a teammate.
They do it all the time. Look, man, players do this stuff all the time. NBA, Major League Baseball.
I'm not saying players don't fake injuries, but you can't. What your solution to this is really the Ravens sign him, and if he signs down to a contract that he doesn't feel compensates him, he should start faking injuries.
No, not to fake injuries. What I'm saying is all of a sudden he can sit out. He can start and he is the obvious starter for this Baltimore Ravens team. They don't have a quarterback, and you're starting all over again, even if you draft a quarterback, because the rookie doesn't get the speed of the NFL. It's a completely different motion. We're not saying that the NFL is faster than NCAA. We know that that's not the case, but the speed of the NFL is all its own. And if Lamar Jackson finds a way to get that contract signed, he has the ability to say, I'll be your starter. And then all of a sudden, a little minor injury to you and I is a major injury to him. And then he could sit out and call it a day.
I think that would be not an ideal outcome for either party. And what I think would be an ideal outcome, look, I don't know what the landscape is for Lamar Jackson, but if he can find somebody who will give him a better deal, maybe the bridges are burned in Baltimore, and whatever it takes to move him, maybe that's the move, because it's clear the Baltimore Ravens, I don't think it's a behavior issue. I think it's a durability issue, and they just don't want to meet his contract demands, and he's trying to make contract demands that are of someone who doesn't have a durability issue.
Here's the underlying factor to this. There's not many quarterbacks in the NFL that have received the NFL MVP award. Okay. Mm-hmm. Lamar Jackson was one of those guys because he deserved.
So was Carson Wentz, but go ahead.
Carson Wentz, how inconsistent is Carson Wentz?
But since he received the MVP the year the Eagles won with Nick Foles, he had a regular season MVP, got hurt, and Foles won the Super Bowl in 2018.
Foles should have been the one to receive that MVP.
Well, it's a regular season award, Rudy.
It doesn't matter. You can give someone a regular season award during Super Bowl.
No, you cannot.
You can't.
You're not allowed to for any sport. It's a regular season award, like 1995. Olajuwon dominated David Robinson in the Western Conference Finals. Robinson's team had the best record, and he was the MVP. And Olajuwon just absolutely took him apart. And Robinson was still the regular season MVP. No, there are MVP awards. Defensive player of the year, because you can't include the playoffs because not everybody makes the playoffs. So it's not a level playing field.
Well, if they're still playing in let's just say a wild card matchup, then you can name him a regular season NFL MVP, whether they win the game or not.
No, that's why they have Super Bowl MVPs, and I don't even think they have playoff MVPs, but in baseball, sure, they have. I don't know if they have division series MVPs, but they do have the NLCS and the ALCS MVP. It is separated from the regular season. And I am lock solid positive on this.
Sure, certainly. No, and that's accurate as well. What I'm saying is that when you have an NFL MVP on your team, you pay him. But in order to continue keeping him upright, you acquire the position needs as this team is in lack thereof offensively. Defensively, there aren't very many holes whatsoever. They may have to fill a cornerback spot or maybe a nickel safety and to help grow them inside of the system. The problem is that if the Baltimore Ravens continue, and I say continue because this has been an ongoing theme, where Ozzie Newsome say, you know what, you're on your own. Eric DeCosta took it over, and now Eric DeCosta also making horrible position acquisitions, especially in free agency. They didn't do anything in free agency other than acquiring OBJ without a quarterback situation in sight solved for. So this is tomfoolery by the Ravens. It's going to cost them even more heavily, especially when they face the AFC North division foes, Steelers, Browns, Bengals, especially the Bengals. Bengals are out for blood. This is their third attempt in the playoffs trying to get to the Super Bowl. So they're extremely hungry. But what the Bengals did that the Ravens did not do is acquire certain pieces to keep their quarterback upright, whereas Baltimore Ravens did not. Nor did they give him offensive weapons to keep him fluid, to keep the chains moving with those position players. So if I was Lamar Jackson, I'd say, well, depending on what you do in the draft, if you acquire an offensive tackle or maybe a guard or maybe two guards on the opposite side, left guard and a right guard, then, okay, you have the protection. Wonderful. What are you doing in the wide receiving core? What are you doing with tight end slant wide receivers? What are you doing with tight ends other than my go-to guy in Mark Andrews? You can't hit Mark Andrews every single time the ball is in your hands. I mean, that's just dumb. It's like running a football every single time you touch it during the regular season, postseason, and Super Bowl run. It just doesn't work. Teams will blow you up, create blitz packages to just blow your mind. So if I was Lamar Jackson, I would look very carefully what the Baltimore Ravens are doing. If for some reason they acquire the kind of guys that are needed for him to succeed, then I would go ahead and sign that tender. Otherwise, sit out and call it a day.
I mean, I have trouble seeing this this ending with Lamar Jackson being a Raven and continuing on, because it seems like this standoff has been going on for a while and nothing's changing and other players are signing. And I get it that fans are antsy, but I don't know whether something will happen. I have a feeling if I was Baltimore, I might be looking in other directions.
They are. Baltimore Ravens are. The problem is that they can get a quarterback, and then now let's just say they acquire one. They'll have OBJ and a couple of other pieces, but that's it. That's it. There's nothing more, nothing less. And you obviously dwindle down during training camp to find out who's going to be your starter and who's not in all high positions: quarterback, center, guards, tackles, nickels, safeties. I mean, it really boils down to to those battles that you have at training camp. So without Lamar Jackson, I don't know what this offense is going to look like, to be quite honest with you. I know Greg Williams has his hands full there defensively, but what do they do offensively? Who do they use for a quarterback if they don't, let's just say they draft one, but he's low end, he's not going to cost them.
Yeah, no, it's going to, you'll save millions of dollars, but your product on the field, it's a gamble. And then people are going to say, I don't want to compare this, and we're going to wrap this up, but you talked about, you got to pay an MVP. He's also been injured. This is not a great, but Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, at the end of his career, he got a massive contract after his Achilles, and he was done. The Lakers just gave him all this money. They were paying him on past performance, and he wasn't he wasn't very good under that contract. Okay. And you can go back and audit it, but it's not, I'm speaking just in generalities here. I don't think this is a similar situation because Lamar Jackson's still a young player and Kobe was at the end of his career, but 34% of snaps the last 2 years to be missed. That's not 12%. That's more than, that's a third of the snaps. 1 out of 3 snaps the last 2 years. Despite what you can court with the record, he's not on the field. So they need him to be on the field. So I think either Lamar Jackson is going to have somebody do an intervention with him and be like, listen, we all want certain things. You're going to make 200 million instead of 250. I mean, it's such funny money, but it's an ego thing. Let's not be wrong. You want to be the highest paid, but it doesn't have to always make sense. Like Daniel Jones, you signed for 41, and
not worth it.
Bro, right? He said he has rushing touchdowns, but he had 16 passing touchdowns last year. Patrick Mahomes had 34 passing touchdowns last year and only makes a couple $1 million more a year. There's no question that Daniel Jones is not close to Patrick Mahomes, who is on a clear Hall of Fame trajectory. So money, it should, but it doesn't always tell the whole story. And if he doesn't get his money, he can play with the chip on his shoulder too, or figure something out maybe where he doesn't sign something long-term, and then he proves that he's healthy if he wants to bet on himself. So stuff to float around in your head here on the issues of sports, along with the issues of life that you're having. So I'm giving you some fun things around the word issues. So that's going to wrap things up. We are going to share this, like this, Share it on YouTube, wherever you want, whatever you got to do. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, share, promote, tell your friends. For Rudy, Rude Dog, Reyes, and we will get the CG right next time. I am Evan, Emac, Makovsky, and you are listening to the Issues of Sports. We'll see you next time.